then, and from there I moved on, and it kind of felt like a very natural progression into the world of books. I just decided that I wanted to make that transition into to being a children's author. There's kind of this in-house joke about journalism in that every journalist wants to write a book. And yeah, I actually found that to be true of a lot of my colleagues at the time. And I was no exception. I just didn't know what type of books I wanted to write. But yeah, it's the typical cliche. I had my children, it just felt very natural. And so that was the path I took. And yeah, that was in 2017. I put out my first book, and now 3 books later, the rest is history. And yeah, here I am with you.
I love it. So you started off in like journalism. So did you always kind of like aspire to be a writer?
I think so. I mean, I always enjoyed reading. I always enjoyed writing. I had quite a passion for English. It was what I was good at. And I don't know, I consider it a blessing that I kind of enjoyed doing something that I was good at, so it didn't feel like a struggle. And I think probably I always liked reading, but like in my teenage years, I gravitated towards media. I'm guessing because I read a lot of teen magazines at the time. And again, it all felt very authentic. I feel, even just thinking about it now, it was quite an authentic and I thought authentic journey, and I feel quite blessed in that the magazines that I read, they kind of pulled me towards Black media. And as I got older, I realized, well, actually, I could maybe have a career in this field. And I just kind of started putting the feelers out there. So the company that I worked for, The Voice, that was actually a newspaper that was in my home. My parents always bought the newspaper. So I used to read it, and like I used to go to the back where they would like have their like jobs and things like that. So yeah, I actually applied for a job, and I was completely underqualified for the job. And I went there, and they called me in for the interview. And I have to say, God bless that editor at the time, because he was very kind to me, but he was like, I don't think you're quite right, but he could see I had potential. He invited me in on work experience, and again, the rest was history. I went in work experience, and I always used to say I went in as a trainee, and I never left. So
Wow.
so yeah, I just managed to kind of work through as a junior, progressed as an arts correspondent, and then became the arts editor. And yeah, it was a lovely, brilliant educational 14 years. And yeah, then it was time to move on. I decided to take that leap of faith somewhere new, and here we are.
Nice. Was there any like particular experience or that kind of like really like pushed you towards writing?
I think for me, it was very much a combination of 2 things, which was definitely motherhood. I think that, after having my children, because I used to read a lot of bedtime stories to my children. So it felt very natural to kind of write a story for them. And again, that was combined with my journalism career. I really I have to give a lot of credit to that. I'm not entirely sure I would have taken this path had it not been for that path, in the sense that I think working for Black media in particular kind of opens up your eyes to a lot of just a lot of stories that I guess a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be privy to, whether it be certain injustices, certain stereotypes that are against our children, even from a very young age. So I think that was kind of those 2 things, both motherhood and my journalism journey, pushed me in that direction. And I think it was it was a lot to do. We had a lot of stories in the UK about exclusion, from schools for Black boys in particular. So that's why I have a son and a daughter. But I decided when I wanted to write my first book, even though my son is the youngest, I thought I wanted to start with a boy as the protagonist, a Black boy as the protagonist. So yeah, so that was what was kind of, those 2 things were the inspiration for the first book, Riley Can Be Anything. And so yeah, it took off from there.
That is awesome. So in Riley Can Be Anything, we see like Riley kind of like contemplating what he wants to be when he grows up. And then in Riley Knows He Can, we see him like getting ready to like star in this school play. Mm-hmm. And both of them showing him as like the protagonist, and showing him like thinking about all of these things and showing his confidence. But something that I also noticed is not only do we see like Riley as the protagonist, but another starring role was like the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, was that something that you felt like was important to really show like how the family kind of comes around and supports?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of been integral to all of my books, more so actually the last book that came out, but it was kind of, it was a central theme to all of them. So, you know, with Riley Could Be Anything, it's his big cousin that, you know, was really guiding him through. And again, I think I just wanted to kind of touch on that relationship between cousins, that, you know, we tend to have lots of cousins, don't we? You know, you might not have siblings, but you've always got cousins. So I wanted to kind of touch on that. And actually, my son is, his name is Riley, hence the name of the book. And he was very close to his big cousin. So again, that was a very that was very much art imitating life, because they had, you know, a very strong bond. So that was very much inspired by that particular relationship. So yeah, it was really important to kind of show that Riley, he's you know, he's a little unsure, he's young, he hasn't made up his mind, but he kind of had that big cousin who wanted to help him and give him a little bit of direction. And you know, even at the end, it's not like he's made up his mind as a, you know, as a little boy, but his eyes have been open to the fact that there's potential. And yeah, that is all a lot to do with the family influence. And yeah, that continued throughout the books as well. There's just having that backdrop, having that support system, because yeah, it can, you know, it can often make the difference between success and failure, having somebody in your corner. So yeah, in my books, it's most definitely family.
Absolutely. I absolutely appreciate that, especially someone who like comes from a big family, whereas, you know, my grandfather had 12 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
So my mom has like probably over 50 first cousins.
Oh
There's
wow,
always
that's a big family.
cousins and aunts and uncles and things like that around. And so
Mhm,
that was one of the things that I definitely appreciated, just in like being able to see that, because sometimes you
mhm,
see like diverse, you know, immediate family members in
mhm.
books, but then seeing like the extended family really playing like an integral role
Yeah,
in the characters was definitely nice to see.
thank you.
Absolutely. And so like um in your third book,
Mhm.
we
Ella has a plan.
yes, Ella has a plan. So we were
Mhm.
introduced to Ella in the second book.
Yeah, so that was a very natural transition.
Absolutely. But then she got her own starring
Yeah.
role.
It was well overdue actually, because after the first two books, my daughter was like, "Where's my book?" So I was like, "Coming, it's coming." So yeah, that one. I mean, they were all a labor of love, but that one was a real passion project. That was, you know, I had to do for her just because she wanted it. So I intentionally made it longer just so I could. You said your brother had two books, so now you get a nice long book. So yeah, and that one's for slightly older readers as well. She's older, so I made it a slightly longer read for slightly older children. And yeah, it put her front and center because she was introduced in the middle book, Riley Knows He Can. Again, she was the one that was on hand this time to kind of help Riley through a dilemma. So in the third book, yes, she takes center stage, and she's there to intervene. Again, it's between two cousins, two different cousins
Right.
who are having they're kind of constantly arguing with each other, as families do sometimes.
Absolutely.
So yeah, these two, they like to go head to head, but it's her mum's big party. She doesn't want them ruining the party, so she has to come up with plans. So yeah, again, with the help of some extended family, she devises a plan, and she can't let them ruin the festivities. So yeah, again, it's a nice coming together. Brings together a lot of the old characters that were from Riley Can Be Anything and Riley Knows He Can. So it was nice to bring them all back again, bring the wider family back again to assist Ella with her master plan.
Absolutely. Is Ella kind of like nudging you to get her a second book out there, get started on another?
No, not yet. I think she's good now. She's kind of
Okay. She
she's at
has her
peace
book,
now.
so
Yeah,
it's just like I have something out into the
so,
world.
yeah, she's okay for now. She wouldn't complain if there was another one, but she's good for now. I've bought myself some time.
Well, that's good. That's good. Do you foresee like any of the other family members kind of getting their own starring roles?
It's possible. Isn't that the beautiful thing about stories? It's, there's room to take it anywhere. I mean, honestly, I haven't had any immediate thoughts one way or another, but it's just there's so many nice characters in there that could quite easily have their own spin-off stories. So we'll see. We shall see.
Have a whole line. I love it. I love seeing like each of these different characters
Yeah.
just kind of like had their own story, and
Hmm.
you learn a little bit about each, even through the progression.
Hmm.
So I know something that I mentioned to you that, um, really caught my eye, particularly with like Ella Has a Plan, was just like the diversity in like even the hairstyles
Hmm.
across the book. And so, I'm trying to think of just like on this page when the aunts and uncles are there and so many, you know, varied hairstyles that are just, I am loving it. And I think even with Jade, I'm like, okay, I need that hairstyle. So I know we've talked before, and you said that that was something that you wanted to ensure that your illustrator, captured,
Hmm.
and got right. And so,
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about why that was so important for you?
I think again, it's just to do with authenticity, isn't it? I mean, there's lots about having representation, but within representation, it's like how well do we do it, and can it does it reflect in a way that makes people, does it resonate with people, and so yeah, that was important to me. Again, just within my own family, there's a diversity of image, of hairstyles, and it's just important to reflect that. I didn't want to do like a hair book necessarily, because I just
Right.
think there are so many fantastic books on the market that I personally didn't want to take that direction, but I still wanted to be authentic with the representation of the characters, because of course hair isn't everything, but in many ways it is, the crowning glory, when especially at something like a party, you want to see everybody comes out in their best, and they'll dress their best. So I definitely wanted to create a level of authenticity and variety as well, because
Right.
our hair is nothing if it's not diverse, style. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
wanted to reflect that, and I was just, yeah, so thankful that working together with my illustrator, she was able to capture the essence of what I was looking for, and it has been noted. So I'm very proud that I made that connection fairly well, I hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so just thinking about that, like what does diverse representation in children's books mean to you?
um, I think it's about just everybody having the opportunity to see themselves reflected. It seems so, it seems obvious, but I think it's just something that's so important, and that sadly it's something that not everybody has always had. I certainly don't remember growing up and seeing myself reflected in many of the books that I saw as a child, and that's why I'm just thrilled that you're just seeing more and more books come out that reflect us, and also it's not just, kind of, for me, it's not just seeing ourselves reflected, but it's also having the opportunity to see others reflected as well. I always make a point of saying that books with black characters aren't just for black children or for black audiences. I think it's just as important that everybody gets to see themselves and also other representations, so that we just so that we can stop kind of throwing around the word diversity as if it's some kind of oddity, as if it's some kind of, strange thing that, this thing that we're all trying to work towards. But in actual fact, it's the lives that we live every single day. Most children will go to school with a mixture of people, and I just think that should be reflected in literacy, so that we can see ourselves, we can see others, and we just get a true sense of the world that we live in. And diversity just becomes normalized. It doesn't even need to be a talking point so much. It's just the way of the world.
Absolutely. I think I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday, And we were just talking about, you know, like even as more books are put into the are published and coming out into the world, even the idea of like putting them in a certain section versus like these are children's books.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like yes, we want to make it accessible for people to be able to find if they're looking for specific books, but how do we make sure that it's still not being segregated
That's the thing. Yeah.
even beyond like as they're coming out?
Exactly. I think very often our books tend to be kind of targeted as niche, or you know, for one
Right.
audience only. And I think that, as you say, it's like it's double-edged, isn't it? Because you know, putting out these books, I want them to connect with the audience that they reflect. I want them to, you know, I want young Black children to be able to open them and say, and you know, and see the representation that many people of my generation didn't have. So yes, that is undoubtedly important, but again, that doesn't limit them from other audiences. They're not books that should be considered niche, and I think the minute that we put them in that type of box, it's almost like we're saying they're other. They're not, you know,
Right.
you've got everything else and other. So, and it's not, you know, they're not, they don't belong in the wider market, and that's when it becomes problematic. Whereas if everybody has access to these books, then you know everybody has access to see what diversity looks like, and that, I think that's the key. I think that children, you know, children aren't just the future, they're the present, they're the right now, and they're the ones who can kind of break down some of the isms that perhaps we grew up with, and can kind of see things through a different lens. And that starts with seeing people who look like you and people who don't look like you. And so yeah, I think let's not call them niche, let's just call them books for
Right.
everybody.
Books for everyone. Absolutely. What like I know like through these books, like wanting to be able to one get more books like published in the world so you know everyone can feel represented, right? So there are so many different experiences from every vantage point, so one book cannot represent, you know,
Everybody. Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
So there's always room for like other books to come out about a topic. What has been your experience, or have you tried the experience just in terms of like um moving through like a traditional publisher?
No. In a word, no. I mean, when I first started out, it was a world away from what I was. And, you know, tell you like it was different but the same, in that you know I was privileged to kind of interview a lot of authors in my journalism career, so I kind of got a slight sense of how it worked. Um, so I knew that there would be challenges, especially in terms of perhaps people deeming the type of book that I wanted to write as niche. So I kind of was aware of that from the beginning, but also with no experience of my own as an author. I kind of thought, well, maybe that's where you start. So I thought, oh, let me approach some literary agents. And at the time, it was kind of like, oh, not quite what we're looking for. And, you know, thanks, but no thanks. And after a while, I just kind of thought there has to be another way. And I must credit my husband. He was the brains behind the journey, in that he said, you know what, let's just give this a go. Let's do it ourselves. So we worked together and put them out independently. So no, I've kind of been able to go around the traditional routes. Thus far, it's worked well for me. I've kind of been able to direct my path the way that I wanted it to, and some, you know, wonderful things have come up along the way that have kind of taken us to new levels. So again, the journey has felt very authentic. But to answer your questions, thus far, no, I kind of didn't take a traditional route, and thus far it's served us well.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for any aspiring writers?
I sound like a broken record. I always say that there's a piece of advice that somebody gave me, which was don't get it right, get it written. So,
Mm,
you know, rather than kind of focusing and obsessing on getting everything perfect the first time around, just write it down. You know, as the ideas come, write them down. Try and have the means to kind of jot down ideas. My first two books I actually wrote on my phone when I was traveling to and from work, when I was still in my journalism job. Just as ideas came to me, I would be on the train and I would just type them in my phone, and just kind of built the stories from there. So I would say, yeah, definitely always have the means to take notes. So it might not be pen and paper, but whatever you have,
Right.
write down those notes, get those ideas together. Don't think perfection first time around. Think just get the ideas down, and then once you have an idea, we always used to say the same in journalism. All starts with a good idea. Once you have the basis of an idea, you can build from that. So I'd say, yeah, don't get it right, get it written, build it from there.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So our February theme of the month is equality. And so what would you say is like one word or phrase or maybe a quote that represents equality for you?
Wow. I think a word that has really kind of struck me, probably throughout my whole journey, but definitely in more recent times, is advocacy. I think that equality is fairness, and I think that in on many occasions we can achieve fairness through advocacy. I think that whether it's in the workplace, kind of standing up or speaking up for somebody who you feel is not being treated fairly, whether it's having a platform and using it to pull up others when you can, or speak out to shout about others who are worthy of recognition in your eyes. I think that is very important. I think that that sense of coming together and that sense of kind of standing up for something or someone that you believe in, or something that you're passionate about, I think that kind of helps to work towards that level of equality. If you have something and you can lift somebody up in a way that you can advocate for them and bring them to a level where they'll have more of an equal playing field, I think that is I think very often that can be a great starting point. So yeah, I believe we can and should advocate for others where we can.
Absolutely. I love that. All right. So thinking about you and your family, do you guys have any story time rituals that you guys practice?
Not so much anymore. They're growing up on me now. So my I took so long to write the book for my daughter that now she's kind of progressed beyond that age now. So she's like, she'll just read it like that now. So yeah, we used to read bedtime stories all the time. But my daughter, she's progressed to chapter books now, so she tends to just read independently. So she doesn't need me anymore. So we don't really have the rituals anymore. To be honest, she's more of the reader than my son, though. My son, he does enjoy books. So where he'll let me, I'll still read to him. But I think he's kind of getting to that stage now where he wants to try and read independently as well. He can read, so he'll just try and do things himself. But he will occasionally say, "Oh, can you read this to me, mummy?" So I will read to him. But yeah, the ritual, I feel like I've lost that slightly. So but I think that's a sign. I need to try and bring it back, try and get them to do story time again. But yeah, I'm pleased to see that they will read independently. So they need me a little less, but they'll still do it. So that's the main thing. They still have a passion for stories. So that's good enough for me.
Absolutely. I think the older they get, the harder it is to
I
try to
know.
continue to build in because they're
I
like, I got this. I don't need you anymore. I try to I'll try to read back and forth with my son, and I told you he started high school. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, well, let's just read the chapter together. He was like, no, no, no.
No.
I'll go off and read it and then we can come back and talk about it.
He doesn't need you like that anymore.
Exactly. It's like, I don't like the way that you read. I need to read it myself.
Yeah. But it's nice though, isn't it? It's like they've got their independence, they can do it and they want to do it. That's a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So is there or have there been like in the past any books that have been like hits in your house?
Wow, gosh, we've read so many. So there's an author, a fellow UK author of mine, her name is Casey Alicia. She wrote a book called Love Thy Fro, and my daughter really liked that one. It was just about kind of the various hairstyles that you can wear. My daughter definitely enjoyed that one when she was younger. She enjoyed Ada Twist, Scientist. There's just so many. My son liked the Gruffalo when he was a little bit younger. What was there was another book. What was it called? I want my hat back. Is it I want my hat back by John Klassen? I think it's something along those lines. I may have got that wrong, but yeah, they enjoyed that book as well. Oi Frog, they liked that book. There's just so many. My my daughter's on to chapter book. She's really into the Ruby Booker series by Derek Barnes. She's read them multiple times. They're dog-eared now. She's just read them over and over.
Those are the best ones that they'll just keep going back to.
No, exactly. I don't complain, but yeah, we've got quite a nice mix of books, and they enjoy quite a variety. So yeah, that's nice.
So if you could give parents one piece of advice about reading with kids, what would you say?
I think you have to just make the experience authentic. I think anything that feels forced and contrived is never going to be enjoyable. It has to be fun. It has to be natural. It needs to just be worked into the routine, so it doesn't feel like it's a chore. It's not like, oh, story time. It's story time. It's kind of it should just be a natural thing. Find books that connect with the things that they're interested in, or things that will entertain them, things that will make them laugh, things that they can connect with, things that just make the experience fun and authentic. And I really think that's the main thing. Make it enjoyable, make it relatable, or even if it's not immediately relatable, things that they will enjoy, things that might be relatable to somebody they know. Oh, my friend does that, or my cousin does that, or things that they can connect to, or at least understand, whether it be from the inside or the outside. But yeah, definitely make it fun, make it enjoyable. It's not a chore, it's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Sometimes that's the same advice that I give to going into classrooms.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not excited about it, they're not going to be. They feed off of your energy.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely.
Absolutely. Okay, so in your leisure, what do you prefer, reading or writing?
Oh, wow. It depends. It's really 50-50, to be honest with you. It depends what mood I'm in. I probably read more than I write, but it depends. It depends what mood you catch me in. I like reading a lot of articles, actually. I always find myself just reading something that it's just, and it's so easy these days, isn't it? You just scroll on something,
Absolutely.
You'll just kind of get lost in an opinion piece, or some kind of think piece, or something like that. So yeah, I do like a good read. But yeah, I'll go 50-50. Depends.
Okay.
It depends.
And I was about to say fiction or nonfiction, but you might have just answered that.
Yeah, that's the thing. It just depends on my mood. I probably read, because I read a lot of articles, then obviously it's not always literature.
Right.
So yeah, at the moment I'm probably reading more like news stories, or just more, not news necessarily, but like culture story, art stories, those kind of things. So I actually do need to find another good book to read. Actually, this isn't that shameful, isn't it? I need to find another good book to read. I can't just be reading articles all the time. But I'm reading, that's the main thing.
Absolutely. I've had to start finding books to read, kind of like just for pleasure at night, just to kind of wind my mind down, so I'm not thinking about the news.
Yeah, that's necessary, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. I had to find that balance. It was like, okay,
yeah, you'll need time.
So when you're reading literature, do you prefer physical book or e-reader?
Oh, physical, definitely. Definitely physical book, yeah. And you know, it's quite a bad habit. I tend to buy a lot of books, mostly children's books I tend to
Right.
buy. But again, even if I'm buying for myself, it's yeah, it's always physical books. So I do have books that I need to read, that I bought to read. I want to read them, but it's just kind of finding the time. But yeah, I think
Right.
it's time to make that time to kind of when you're winding down and just find that time to just zone out and read, enjoy a nice good book.
Absolutely. Um, are there any projects that you're currently working on?
There is another book in the pipeline actually. It's actually it's not a Riley book, it's not an Ella book. It's another book. It's more I'd say it's I kind of been kind of billing it as a baby book in the sense that it's like I want it to be I see it's I kind of almost describe it like a lullaby. It's in all my books are rhyming books, so it's
Right.
another rhyming book, and I kind of visualize it like a lullaby in that as the parent reads it to child, it's kind of like a lullaby for them. And the intention is that hopefully it's quite soothing for them as a parent as well, to kind of just ease the kind of worries and angst that you might have either as a new parent or a parent of a very young child in terms of what they'll go through as they grow up. So yeah, I kind of see it for that 0 to 3 market more for the kind of book that a parent would read to a child, and it would hopefully be a keepsake for many years to come, but we shall see.
Absolutely. Can't wait for it to come out.
Thank
Do you
you.
find now, like during the pandemic, do you find yourself like more creative or does it vary?
Again, it varies. That I mean, the book that I was just telling you about, I did write that in the pandemic. So yeah, I obviously had my creativity spurt during that time, which is a good, which is a good thing. Pandemic wasn't all bad. At least it kind
Right.
of it birthed that. Um, but again, it just varies, doesn't it? I mean, I think because we're juggling so many different things as well, it can almost be a drain on your creativity when you're trying to juggle just life in general. But yeah, I certainly can't say that the pandemic has been bad to me in that sense, because it has birthed a book which hopefully will come to fruition sometime in the not too distant future. So yeah, yeah, I did get some creativity out of it. So yeah, I'm thankful for that.
Nice. So thank you so much for joining us today. How can people like stay connected with you?
So it's all the social medias. It's Books by Davina on Twitter and Facebook, and on Instagram it's books underscore by Davina. But yeah, and my website is davinahamilton.com. So you will find me there. Connect.
Awesome. And we're going to make sure that we put all of your information and connections in the chat so
Thank
people can
you.
definitely that information and stay tuned for your upcoming book
Yeah. Thank you so much.
as as well. So we'll drop those links in the chat. And you can also find Davina's books in our bookshop, all of them on our website, www.storiesofacolorfulworld.com. And don't forget to check out our February Equality Picks of the Month. And it was such a pleasure to be able to talk to you today, Davina.
Thank you.
And we will see everybody next week.
Thank you
Have a
so
good
much for
night.
having me.